You'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore.
Okay, we ready to get going?
Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm not going to call the council meeting to order. We have one late change to the agenda, which is the withdrawal of the closed session item 12B. And we've also received 7 items of communication related to staff report ECS 20-06 regarding arenas and halls. If there is nothing further, I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. That's been moved by Councillor Van Passen and seconded by Councillor Columbus. Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm wondering if at this time I could make a request to have a couple of items pulled.
I've lost my own agenda. What just happened to me? Hang on, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Consent item 3A.
Okay.
Communications item 4A and 4B.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've got them all. All right, any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, consent items. So first consent item, Councillor Michelli, staff report DCS 20-30, go ahead.
Guys, sorry, when I was going through this particular item, and just for the information for council, I'm referring to page 10, the third paragraph on that page. It indicates in the second sentence there that the applicant has participated in correspondence between the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation by commenting, and there's a quotation there, that the block subject to the archaeological resource concern is not within the phase containing the semi-detached lots subject to the application and therefore are not relevant to the application. And I do want to ask, and I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure that staff, the correct staff person is not available to answer this question, but I want to know if the MCFN has the same comment regarding that item, is my question, because most of these archaeological digs, they just seem to be fraught with all kinds of potential, peripheral issues, and I'm a little bit concerned that the applicant has made a comment about it, but I don't see anything in there to indicate that the people from the Mississauga Credit First Nation have made the same comment. I just wonder if we can find out if they actually in fact do concur with the applicant's statement.
Want to answer that, Paul?
Through the chair to, through the mayor to the councillor, we can take that back and confirm that, Paula, my mind's going, believes that's the case, but we just want to double check with staff. We believe that is the case, but we will confirm.
I understand, and the only reason I raise it is for the same reason. I just don't want to assume and then find out somewhere down the road that we have misinterpreted what was the truth there. Thank you.
Okay, and my apologies, I didn't take a vote. I don't think I got distracted on the agenda approved as amended, did I? Did we vote on that? Okay, so all in favor of the agenda approved as amended? Great. And so then we'll just handle both consent items together, Councillor Michele, if that's okay? That consent items A and B be approved as follows. Item A, that the application by Villages of Waterford, Thomas O'Hara, 101 Maple Street, Port Carling, affecting the lands described as Part Lot 6 and 7, Part Road Allowance Concession 7, Part Lot 5, Block 20, Plan 19B, Urban Area of Waterford, Norfolk County, to exempt the lands of Part Lot Control, file number PLPL 2020015, be approved for the reasons set out in the report number GCS 20-30, and item B, that staff report PW 20-14, Corporation of Norfolk County Energy Report be received as information. Moved by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, next item, 4A, Councillor Michele.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item regarding the code of conduct complaint and the issues surrounding that, and I know we had this brought up actually at our last council meeting, and so I just wanted to ask, because I know one of the things that is a bit of a concern with regard to that report that we received for our information at our last council meeting was focused on at least one of the aspects of it, was the issue of whether or not the complainant should or should not be identified. And I think we had some brief discussion at that time about the pros and cons of identifying or not identifying someone, and we discussed briefly the whole sort of legal notion of having the right to confront your accuser. And I believe that, generally speaking, around the province, that is about, it seems to be about 50-50, depending on the circumstances and the municipality that's concerned. But I'm wondering if I might suggest that we direct our CAO to complete a report to outline some of the main features of that report that we received from the Integrity Commissioner, just so that we have clarity on and all of the items that were contained in that report. And I'm hoping that our CAO could take care of that for us.
Through the mayor to the councillor, if that's council's request, yeah, we can certainly take a look to provide kind of a report on the issues raised by the Integrity Commissioner, and and provide a report back to council on that.
Sorry, just that there was a resolution and a debate already on that annual report, and it's been received as information for council. So there is an existing disposition on that report. So I'm not arguing with the CAO, but we do have an end outcome on that report now on our record. So I don't know if it's through this complaint. I don't know if it's the appropriate way to raise it, or if you would want to do a notice of motion for council to reconsider that item, to bring that up again for a report on the annual report.
Well, I think last week, Councillor Columbus actually, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess it was, you wanted to make that motion, did you not? So,
That's correct, and I think our clerk commented on it and said that the report was there, so he wouldn't entertain the motion.
okay, so did we want to waive the rules of procedural order to
I don't know, it's
carry on?
Councillor Michele is in charge right now of what he wants to do with it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And not to correct Councillor Columbus too much on this, but I recall that at the time, the request went to have the clerk prepare a report, and he explained why he didn't think it was appropriate for him to be put in that position, because he would have to impart some of his own opinion, and he didn't think that was an appropriate thing for him to do. And that's part of the reason why I'm thinking that the CAO might be the more appropriate staff to pursue that. But I do want to make sure I'm following the procedural rules as well, unless we do need, in fact, to suspend the procedural rules to do that.
Councilor Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That whole line of questions has absolutely nothing to do with this piece of paperwork that we're dealing with today. Now, I think the proper process is that other report has been dealt with. It's been dispensed with. If somebody wants to bring up a notice of motion and a motion to reconsideration, they can do that, but it's got nothing to do with this one. You can't just bring in different ideas because it came on the same letterhead.
I think, I can't speak for Councilor Michelle, I have no idea, but I'm assuming there was concern from the council members 2 weeks ago that I think the words were that they couldn't hear properly on the computers and they wanted to talk more about it. So I suspect that's probably what's inspired this. So let's first handle this motion, that the communication from Megan Cowan, Office of the Integrity Commissioner regarding the Code of Conduct Complaint 20-01 be received as information. That motion's been moved by Councillor Van Passen and seconded by Councillor Rabbits. All those in favor? And that's carried. I guess, Councillor Michelle, if you wanted to request that council waive the rules of procedural order, or Councillor Columbus, if you wanted to deal with that at this point, since you say that you didn't get the opportunity, I wouldn't want to deny someone the opportunity. Last week, you had mentioned last time that you wanted to put a motion on the floor and you felt it was going to be defeated. So did you?
Sorry, if it assists, the CEO and myself would have no problem taking direction under other business to do a report if that's so the desire. The only issue that I was objecting to was just if we've dealt with the matter last week, we don't want to re-raise it this week. But if there is a report, it's easy to do.
Okay, we'll deal with.
I think that what was suggested there under other business.
We'll deal with it later on then in other business. Does that work, Councilor Michelle?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, next one, back to you again, Councilor Michelle. The Heritage and Culture Advisory Committee.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to speak to that letter that was written by the chair of the Heritage and Culture Advisory Committee. As I'm sure council knows, I am the council representative on that committee. And the theme and the sort of the thrust of that letter is regarding the lack of consultation that took place with that advisory committee before some budgetary decisions were made regarding museums and those kinds of county facilities. And I do think that I just want to make it clear for the members who sit on that committee, and also for the members of the public, and also for my colleagues. I think we would probably all concede that there were some occasions when we would have been better served with a little bit more advanced consultation with all of our advisory boards and committees, but in this particular case, that's the example I'm using. And so I know that they expressed grave concern that we did not do that at the time, and I hope this would just be a little bit of a hopeful learning experience for us going forward in the future. Thank you.
Okay, motion moved by Councillor Rabbits. I need a seconder that the communication from Linda Campbell regarding Heritage and Culture Advisory Committee budget follow-up be received as information, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to the approval of minutes, we have the regular council minutes from April 28th. If there's no errors or omissions, seeing none, they'll be declared adopted. Then we have the Norfolk County Agricultural Advisory Board minutes of March 3rd before us. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, I have a motion that's been moved by Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Rabbits, that the Norfolk County Agricultural Advisory Board minutes of March 3rd, 2020 be received as information. All those in favor? And that's carried. Next, on to first staff report. Staff report PW 20-34, Don John Boulevard Sidewalk Alternatives. Mr. Godby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to council. The report in front of you today is titled Don John Boulevard Sidewalk Alternative. It is in response to some of the questions that came up last meeting. Essentially, providing a brief overview of the project to date. The engineering design for Don John reconstruction was awarded in 2019. It went out for tender in June of 2019. At that time, we only received one bid, and based on that pricing, the staff recommendation was not to award and to retender the project at a future date. In October of 2019, staff had received direction from this council to bring back options respecting paved shoulders or bike paths on Don John, and that the sidewalk was not to be installed as was previously included in the design work. So based on that, staff are here basically to tell you that the removal of the sidewalk from this project represents an overall construction savings of approximately $63,000. And when we look into the addition of a paved shoulder or a bike lane that was discussed in October, we will incur or would incur some re-engineering fees as a result of that, because the design drawings were already at the 100% complete stage. The construction estimate that we have to do something of that nature reaches into approximately $55,000. Plus, we anticipate between $5,000 and $7,000 of engineering fees in order to accommodate such a thing. That brings the total for the engineering design of a paved shoulder or bike lane to approximately $62,000, which is pretty close to the same as a sidewalk installation. So with respect to the paved shoulder or bike lane, I guess just to highlight some of the engineering challenges that it presents are primarily with lot grading in the area. The original design was to have a standard road width and then curb and gutter. And in order to widen for a bike lane or a paved shoulder, one of the issues that we would have would be pushing that curb line back to one side or the other, or split evenly amongst both. The issue there would be that we will end up having to do some regrading, more so closer to the actual private property lines, and end up with more of a steep grade coming down to the widened road width. Tied to that goes along with when you widen the road out is more of an aesthetics thing, but you would not have the seamless road that you would typically see in an urban environment. The one factor that we also need to consider is the effect on-street parking. We would have to have an area where this bike lane is for basically no parking to be enforced, primarily because right now there is on-street parking permitted on Don John Boulevard, and should a bike lane be installed, we cannot have people or be through our construction methods encouraging people to be parking within that area. Overall, I guess the biggest concern that that has been brought forward from an engineering design standpoint with including a paved shoulder or a bike lane relates to the fact that the TAC manual, which basically kind of sets out all the best practices and industry guidelines and engineering basis for things like all of our design of roads, whether that's the road itself, pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities. The biggest issue that we have there is the call for increased separation of pedestrians from the traveled roadway. That is why a paved shoulder or bike lane is not necessarily encouraged to be used as an alternative to a walking path. At the end of the day, these are kind of the summary of issues that we have when looking at this situation. And staff would like to note that our integrated sustainable master plan had identified that one of the areas that Norfolk County was to look at is to complete sidewalk connectivity, which was the reason for the original proposed sidewalk in this area. That is a result of the extensive consultation, public consultation that was done throughout 2015 and 2016. So all of that being said, where we are at the current moment is that we have direction that a sidewalk will not be installed on Don John Boulevard in this project area. And staff are recommending that we do not proceed with the installation of a bike lane or a paved shoulder in this area. If there are any other questions, I will gladly answer.
I just have one quick question. I'll turn it over to council. In terms of, I mean, you're showing the cost as being equal now, and it's kind of been part of Norfolk County's problem in the past of not looking into the future. So I'm not sure what the replacement cycle is on sidewalks. However, how many years?
To the mayor, we don't necessarily have a set replacement schedule on sidewalks.
Just
When
an
we
average
do
lifetime that they,
25 to 50 years, I guess, really. It depends on when we do a reconstruction of a reconstruction project where there is already sidewalk, it'll automatically be replaced at that point. However, this council did approve our budget and the award of tender for various sidewalk projects across the county. Those are simply reconstruction jobs, and a lot of that is primarily driven by condition. Just as a general statement, historically, we don't have an aggressively active program of going out and replacing sidewalks up to current standards unless there's been issues brought forward about them.
I guess just my point I was getting at, I could see how, you know, the cost may be, well, you're showing it as being approximately equal now up front because of the additional design work, but in the future, when the road was repaved, ultimately there wouldn't be that additional design work. So the paved shoulder would show perhaps a greater savings down the road or a multi-use path. But anyway, Councillor Martin, sorry, did I see your hand? Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple questions. There's no storm sewers in the area, and why were storm sewers not put in place? Because it's all surface drainage and ditches from what I noticed.
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, this stretch of Don John, when it was originally constructed, was not required for whatever reason it was. Part of this project is actually to do storm sewers as well. The existing ditches will no longer exist. It'll get a complete urban profile of curb and gutter and a storm drainage.
And second question, where the Don John transitions from the newer pavement, I guess, where the sidewalks are, to the narrow, rough area, will the road surface be wider, quite a bit wider than what it is now?
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, essentially what you would see there is the existing newer portion of Don John, we'll call it, which is kind of the north and curving to the east of Jailing Crescent. You'll basically be, it'll be a match seamless to that road profile through down to Highway 6.
So it will be wider then, thanks.
Further questions? Councilor Shelley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jason, so this project originally began as a continuation of a sidewalk section on Don John Boulevard, and there was, I'm assuming, reasonable public input at that time. I think you mentioned 2015, 2016.
Through the mayor to Councillor Michelli, the consultation on this particular piece of sidewalk would not have happened in 2015, 2016. Our integrated sustainable master plan and active transportation master plans were developed through that time period, which looked at the overall scheme of walkways and sidewalks and bicycle paths across the county as a whole. Out of that recommendation of that report, which was adopted by council to be Public Works' policy on installation of these facilities going forward, out of that, there was also the recommendation to complete these sidewalk segments. So when the engineering design began in 2019 for this, staff proceeded with the expectation that it would receive the full urban profile, meaning water, sanitary, storm replacements, and the installation of a sidewalk to finish that one piece of connectivity. The public engagement piece would have occurred at the public information centers that went on for that particular reconstruction project.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Jason. So, and then last fall, council received a deputation about the hope that there would not be sidewalks installed here, and that was that was passed by council. And now, I guess my question, and this one, I hope it's okay for me to direct this question to my colleague, Councillor Martin. It just seems as though there has been this revolving discussion about the validity of petitions that have been circulated and how they were put together and how they were, worded. And I am just trying, if it's possible for you to just briefly explain, because I'm always, trying, I think as most of us do, I think all of us do, to include as much public input and opinion on these matters as we can. But I'm finding in this particular case with the revolving petitions that I'm having a hard time identifying what is actually the case. So if you are able to, that would be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. And certainly, I can't speak to the validity of a petition, but however, the rest of the information you have brought forward is accurate. The council was approached and a petition was brought forward that had results requesting no sidewalk. And so at that point in time, council, we decided as a whole, and I certainly was instrumental in it, that we would save that money and not put it forward in a sidewalk. Immediately after that, I had correspondence from individuals who lived on that street, and then for about 3 weeks consistently, there was dialogue in the local Port Dover paper from various people who left their names and their contact information, requesting that they did actually want sidewalks, and they didn't know it was that easy to just come to council and provide a petition, and so on and so forth. So at that point, I spoke with Mr. Godby about it. He was looking for, I asked him for, information at this point in time where we go forward. He was also looking for different direction from council to bring us the information forward, and then budget, and then COVID. So that led us to 2 weeks ago, where we asked Mr. Godby to bring us all of this information in one report. Since then, you've been privy to lots of emails and correspondence from people and residents on that road. I think the difference between the two petitions, again, I cannot speak to the validity of either one of them. The most recent petition that came in had a lot further consultation down the road a little farther where there is a sidewalk. So I think that there was some consultation with individuals who still live on that same road, but they were speaking to finishing off that connectivity versus originally we heard from people who would have a sidewalk put directly in front of their home or across the road. Does that help?
Yes, very much. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Van Pass.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, I'm going to ask all the councillors to give me some advice on this because, back in Ward 4, we're just not used to sidewalks, so we don't know how to use them anyway. Are they put in place for the individual property owners in where the road runs in front of there, or are they put in place for the entire community? And I think we got to get back to thinking that way, because no matter what you want to do, there's going to be somebody that agrees and somebody that disagrees. But is the sidewalk there for the greater need of the entire community, or are we allowed to just pick and choose where we put them on the matter of a petition, or if somebody doesn't like it, or should we just put some in front of half the homes that do want it and not in front of the other half, or and I've read a bunch of emails that have been sent out about they don't want them because the road was never had sidewalks before and they want to keep that look to it. And well, maybe we can put the 4-foot ditches back down in there because that's how the road originally was. If they want to put storm sewers in, they can pay for it as a local improvement and they can pay for it themselves. Why should the rest of the taxpayers in Norfolk County pay $500,000 to put storm sewers to drain their front lawns? So you can't really have it both ways. So what's the decision going to be on behalf of council? Are we putting in a sidewalk to keep the property owners happy on one side of one road, or are we put in sidewalks to sort of look after the needs of an entire community and make it walkable and make it easy for everyone? And that would be my question, and maybe my fellow councillors could give me some direction on it because I'm unsure.
Councillor Huffman, I see wants to answer you.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Well, I guess I have a bit of an answer for Councillor Van Passen, is the fact that there was a vote on it and council decided not to put in sidewalks. So they must have based their information on the deputation from the individuals. Now, I unfortunately was not at that meeting on October 15th, and I've been very forthright with the correspondence with the constituents in Port Dover that I would have voted for sidewalks because I strongly believe in the connectivity and the community engagement and the safety aspect. But at this point in time, to me, this is a moot point. It was done October 15th. It was voted on by council to have no sidewalks. So to me, this is a done deal, and we need to move on. And it looks like the bike lane, in terms of cost effectiveness and the no parking, that doesn't create any kind of solution. So we need to go back to the original motion that was brought forward by Councillor Martin and Mayor Chop on October 15th.
Councillor Martin, do you see your hand there?
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Respectfully to my colleague, it's not over with because it's in our agenda because staff need better direction. And I am completely comfortable with taking the blame for moving a motion that has to then be reconsidered, but it is what it is, and we're having the discussion here today. So I would look to the clerk and see if at this time he would accept, or the chair would accept, motion for reconsideration on the sidewalks.
I'm going to defer to you, Andy, on this one, just because I'm not sure whether we would be better to defer it to next council meeting and put the notice of motion again, or is it still technically on the table as a result of moving off of it last meeting?
So through you, Mayor Chop. So what happened at our last meeting was a motion was essentially put on the table, and nothing happened with it. So if you think about the table as being an imaginary table, the table still exists, and the motion to reconsider is still sitting on the table and can be lifted at any time by anybody. Now, if it's council's decision to give further notice to people, there's been notice going back, I think, to February of this. So you could decide to give further notice of it and delay it further, or you could lift that reconsideration as it was placed on April 28th and try the will of council under a 2/3 motion.
To you.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I guess I'm of the opinion that this issue has been delayed and stretched out long enough. I think the road needs to be done regardless what we do today with this information. The road work needs to be done. So that's just a further delay. And I just don't think that there's any additional information that we would be gathering from staff or sharing with the public on this. They're waiting for a decision. So would be my preference to move forward with it.
Okay, so you want to move forward with a motion for reconsideration? Okay, is there a seconder? Shocker, Councillor Van Passen. And then I'll turn it over to you, Andy.
Sure, sorry. Let me just... Sorry, so just to read it out, that resolution number 10 of the council minutes of October 15th, 2019 be reconsidered to reopen resolution number 8 of the special council and committee meeting minutes of October 3rd, 2019, which reads as follows, that Public Works Division be directed to remove the sidewalks from the request for proposal RFP for Don John Boulevard. And then the second aspect of that's already been completed, so we don't need to reconsider that. And I'll go through now unless there's, since it's reconsideration, there's no debate, so I'll do the recorded vote. Councillor Geisens. Councillor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes.
Councillor Michele.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
No.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
The motion carries to reconsider. So now the next item on the floor would be whether or not to have sidewalk.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Chop. So I guess at this point in time, the engineered drawings are done. We have all the information in front of us, and I think it's just a matter of bridging the missing piece to connect the rest of the road. And I have been spending time advocating with Public Works staff on my own to have conversations with the MTO with regards to a crosswalk over Highway 6. There's lots of young families in that subdivision who have requested that so that they can then get to the other side of the road and use the sidewalks and travel to and from downtown. So I guess I would like to move forward with putting a motion on the floor to install the sidewalks.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Rabbits, further debate?
May I speak to it? And for our Ward 4 representatives' benefit, and for those that want some information about sidewalks, it's a difficult conversation. It can be controversial for a neighborhood. I want to give you my thoughts on it. The reason I'm supporting the ward representative in Port Dover for the installation of the sidewalks is I feel that sidewalks in general are a safety feature. It promotes active transportation. I'm thinking about getting those children off of the roadway, getting dog walkers off of the roadway. I'm thinking about when you have vehicular traffic coming into the same space as pedestrians, it's a recipe for an accident. So it is a safety feature at the end of the day. However, we're also a community and a county that forces our elderly and our disabled persons to shovel snow. So they have to maintain a difficult situation in front of their home. They may not have the means to pay for someone else to do this. They then have to do it themselves. And this is why many residents don't want a sidewalk for the maintenance. But there's also a concern about property rights. And you may have had a nice buffer between you and the road that was once grass, and now it's going to be a maintenance concern and a hassle for you to have to maintain in the winter months. So it's a tough decision for a councillor to try to figure out what's the right call here. Just as Councillor Van Passen said, you're going to have people that agree and people that disagree. And a ward representative, I feel a councillor has to try to do the greatest good for the greatest amount of people, and that's likely looking towards it as a community asset. And with the connectivity, you can see in the map there, it's going to tie the rest of the sidewalks together. I tend to defer to the councillor's ward, who ultimately has to answer to her constituents or his constituents. I've sided on the opposite of these, where we've had the affected properties asking not to have sidewalks, and I have sided against my comments about public safety and connectivity, respecting their views, that the majority of the residents, and I'm actually making reference specifically to Holden Avenue, did not want sidewalks, so there wasn't sidewalks in that project. And that was a difficult call. I had to make the decision, am I supporting the folks on that road that are saying we don't want sidewalks, or am I thinking of the greater good and the connectivity and the safety? Sidewalks are maybe better suited to different communities than others. Holden Avenue is very close to a school zone, and Port Dover isn't a far walk to get to school. There's going to be students walking down that road. So these are what we're trying to balance as a councillor for the public. We're getting it from both sides. We're getting that, I can't maintain this asset, but we're also getting, I'm worried about the safety of my children and the safety of myself when I'm out walking my dog. And it's a tough balancing act. I think ultimately it's the ward representative that has to make that tough call, and that's why I'm supporting Amy Martin, her request for sidewalks in Port Dover.
Well, I believe last October I voted opposite, so I'm going to hold tight on my vote from the past council decision. Thank you.
Councillor Geisens.
Yes.
Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus.
No.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes.
Councillor Michele.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop. Motion carries.
Okay, we're done with Don John. Moving on, summary of bid awards for the period ending May 5th. Shelley, is it you're going to present?
Thank you, Mayor Chop, and to Council. This is a summary report of bid award requests for Council's review and consideration. The bid results identified in this request have been developed and issued in accordance with Norfolk County purchasing policy and procedures, and the recommended bidders have been proposed on the basis of having submitted the lowest compliant bid that meets minimum specification. There are no budget amendments required in 2020.
Councillor Huffman, can you put that on mute again for us? Thank you.
There are no budget amendments required in 2020 or issuance of debenture needed for the recommendations presented today. Staff are seeking approval for the respective general managers to execute contracts with the successful bidders. A detailed summary of each request has been outlined in attachment A of the report, and staff will assist with any questions that you may have.
Any questions from council members for Shelley? Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 149, the contract with Cambium Inc. for Long Point source water protection. Now, maybe I'm just not understanding, but the contract is for $656,740, which is $147,000 something a year for 4 years, but the contract is for 2 years with options for an extension of 2 additional one-year terms. So is that just the wording of the contract? Like, shouldn't it be half of that with the option of adding that much again, or half of that again each time, or?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Van Passen. Mr. Godby is here this evening to help with that contract detail as well. However, I will note that some of the scope of work will not be completed in year one of the contract, and then we'll move over into year two and subsequent years of that contract, as I understand it. You will also note in the financial comments of the spreadsheet as well, there will be a budget adjustment that is needed in 2021 for this contract scope.
The 656, like the 740, is only if you kick in the last two amendments to add the other years on. So if
Through
you
the
cancel
mayor.
it after 2 years, then it's only not that.
Through the mayor, that is correct. Councillor Van Passen.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also, with respect to the Long Point Region Source Protection Plan, Shelley, it talks of, there's quite a few dollars in there. And I just wondered if it's ever been considered to have in-house, that kind of work done in-house, rather than put it out to a consulting company. Does it actually take 2 employees or 1 employee, or what are the details that it's costing that much money?
Thank you, Councillor Columbus, through the mayor. I'm going to direct the question to the CAO. We did have this discussion last week as we were working on this report.
Thank you. Through the chair. Councillor Columbus, either fools never differ or great minds think alike, so that was a question I posed when it came to approval. There is a contractual obligation for a period of time, but we are going to review whether we insource that service, and we're going to evaluate that next year.
Good.
Further questions? Now I don't have it in front of me. I have, the staff resolution was moved, or recommendation was moved by Councillor Rabbits, and just need a seconder. Councillor Columbus, any further debate? Oh, Ryan, Councillor Taylor, sorry, anything to add?
That was a second, sorry.
Okay, okay. In that case, I guess, Andy, I'll get you to take the vote.
Councillor Geisens.
Yes.
Councillor Rabbits.
Yes?
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Right.
Councillor Michele.
Yes.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes?
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next is staff report ECS 20-06 regarding the proposal process for arenas and community halls. Prior to the presentation of this report, I have from Andy here, can I get a motion to receive the items of correspondence circulated in the gray packages for information? That motion was moved by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? And that's carried. And Shelley, I guess you're going to present this report as well?
Thank you, through the mayor. I think Mr. Burgess is going to offer some introductory comments, and then I'm happy to present some additional details.
Thanks. Through the mayor, to council, I just did want to, as councilors have received the same correspondence and have read some of the same social media that we've read, I just wanted to ensure that, you know, this report is put in context and to drive a couple of key points. First and foremost, a lot of times governments get criticized for only having 2 tools in their toolbox. One is to raise taxes, or 2 is to cut services. And when we went down the budget path last year, we wanted to ensure that we looked at other options, including how do we engage with the public to provide a service in a different manner, to do things differently. And this report is part of that. I did want to stress there is a misconception out there that, you know, we'd be selling assets. This proposal does not contemplate the sale of any assets. there's lots in the social media saying that there's a decision to be made. There's really the only decision to be made tonight is how we're going to go out to engage with the public to get actual ideas that are actionable back to council. The importance of timing here for this council, and more so this year than what we had thought, with COVID-19 and the implications on our budget, this council is going to be making some very tough decisions, both with their remaining 2020 budget and frankly with their 2021 budget. Most communities will be looking at potentially pretty significant cuts. So when the intent of this is to bring back some potential solutions, and maybe there are none out there, but some potential solutions to reduce our cost for operating some of these assets or the taxpayer levy for some of these assets during budget time, so council can then weigh some other options versus just cut or raise taxes. So with that preamble, I'll turn it over to Ms. Darlington to walk through a bit more of the report.
Thank you through the mayor, and thank you to the CAO for those comments. As outlined, this has been prepared as follow-up to the direction that council provided during the 2020 budget deliberations. The purpose of the report is to seek council's direction and council's approval for the proposed next steps. Staff have outlined a modified process consisting of a call for submission that would provide a formal public process in effort to maintain an open process that is impartial and transparent and would include an extended 12-week posting period. The primary objective would be to seek submissions from partners or operators who are interested in engaging with the county in order to operate or support these community assets. This modified process would allow for all submissions to be further reviewed by council for consideration and further direction. As indicated in the report, the county would be under no obligation to approve, accept, or reject any submission. The scope of services included for the call for submission outlines option 1, the license of a facility or an operator scenario. Option 2, a community partnership arrangement, or alternatively, if a proponent has another option for Norfolk County to consider, they can submit a fulsome proposal to the county and it will be considered as an unsolicited proposal. The report further recognizes that user fees, ICE allocations, and current facility bookings are of concern to patrons, council, and staff. To address this concern, language has been included to ensure user fee rates are aligned with the rates approved by council for 2020 and 2021, and that any ICE times or other bookings must remain in effect. Staff have estimated a timeline for the call submission process, which would see an initial report back to council in November of this year for further review, consideration, and direction on next steps. Staff recognize that a number of individuals and groups have reached out regarding the timeline. Council may wish to direct staff to look at an alternative timeline or to extend the posting period beyond the 12-week posting period. I do caution, as Mr. Burgess did as well, that extending into November aligns with our budget timelines, so it may be something that council want to consider giving some direction on the timelines we've outlined in the report. And with that, staff will assist with any questions that council may have.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes. Thank you, Shelley. And so the user groups, say minor hockey, registering for young hockey players, do they, you're saying whoever would take that over would absorb that registration and all that, is what you're telling us?
I'll field the question. So the simple answer is yes. If there's any bookings from minor hockey or anybody else, the requirement is for, if there is an operator for that site, is to take on all those bookings. And in most cases, The issue that we have is we need more ice time rentals. So for someone to give up ice that's already been rented wouldn't make business sense to begin with. But there would be a requirement in the call process that that's a condition of acceptance.
So right now, it's go. They can register their hockey players in all 5 arenas and proceed that way. There's nothing. What's the marketing plan to lay this all out before the user groups?
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, the first statement is yes, that's absolutely correct. We'll write language into the call for submission that ensures that ICE bookings and contracts remain. From a marketing perspective, we did identify in the draft report that there would be a non-mandatory bidder meeting so that we could outline the process and answer any questions. We would again have an extended period that groups could ask questions. Typically, a request for proposal process when we're looking at this volume would be anywhere from 3 to 6 week process, and staff are recommending that we actually double that amount of time. So a lot of information available at the start, and then it would give individuals and user groups the opportunity to review all of that detailed information and pose any questions that they have for response by staff.
Thank you. My second question, I noticed on page 157 of our agenda package, page 3 of 9 of the report, the Delhi Friendship Center is mentioned as a community hall. And I was very surprised, and you were trained in the Township of Delhi days, so you know what goes on there. It is a seniors group, yet the Simcoe Rec Center is okay with having seniors there, and the Port Dover Kinsman Scout Hut is okay. So why single out the Delhi Friendship Center seniors group as a separate biddable item?
Through the mayor, thank you for that clarification, Councillor Columbus. It may have just been an oversight on the part of the review from staff, but we can certainly review that item in collaboration with the Community Services Department.
Okay, I'm pleased to hear that because I'm sure my phone will be ringing.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to Shelley. So your comments in response to Councillor Columbus with regards to marketing perspective, the non-mandatory bidder meeting, would it be fair to say that with the extended period of time that you would go through that process, that would alleviate some of the pressures and concerns that council is hearing from constituents and user groups concerning the rest of the budget meetings that we were not able to complete due to COVID? Because that is one, again, reoccurring theme in a lot of the emails and correspondence we're receiving. And I certainly looked some of my community user groups in the eye and told them that we would, of course, be completing these meetings and sharing that information about what the process would look like. So is it similar in nature? Would it be similar information that's being shared with these groups over that extended period of time?
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, absolutely. The pre-bid meeting would outline the bidding process and have an opportunity for any proponents to ask questions. We would take those questions and provide a fulsome response, and all proponents registered would receive that information. I have spoken with the General Manager of Community Services. I do understand there's regular engagement with user groups. Most recently today, I believe, Mr. Cridlin had discussions with user groups, but so certainly individuals could reach out and ask any questions, and staff would follow up. Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I apologize if what I'm going to ask has already been asked. I'm having a very difficult time understanding Shelley and Mr. Burgess. It's very garbled. So my apologies. But what I wanted to ask, I believe it's kind of following up with Councillor Martin, is that I've also had a great deal of discussions with people in the community and have been very forthright saying that we would be continuing the budget road show, and we only completed one of those, and the public is feeling that we're not being extremely transparent, and that in all honesty, I feel that it would be more prudent for us to, before we move any further with this aspect of the budget, that we complete our due diligence to the community and to the constituents and do those information sessions. And the second part of my question or statement is, why a request for proposals and not an RFP? I'm still not clear as to why there's been the change.
So, do you want to take the second question?
You do the first. Would you like to do the first one first?
Sure, we'll answer it in order, Councillor Huffman, through the mayor to council. With regards to budgetary engagement, yes, unfortunately, we had to cancel budgetary engagement meetings due to COVID-19. When I came here as a consultant to work on the budget process, I had asked staff at the time in September what was the result of the community budget engagements that were undertaken, and it was represented to me at the time that we don't do budget engagement meetings. And so what this council will see for the budget process coming up is, I believe it's coming in July, and it's either June or July. There will be an outline on what's the proposed budget process for this year. It'll be different than what staff will propose this year. It'll be different than what happened last year and in previous years for Norfolk County. And there will be mandatory budget engagement sessions for the 2021 budget. We could go back to do budget engagement and explanation for the 2020 budget, but frankly, we're sitting here almost in June. Our budget, frankly, is blown up. We're not even operating a lot of the functions for other reasons, and we got a $2 million hole in our budget. So I'm not sure the practicality of going back to discuss a 2020 budget when nothing resembles what it did then. I think what's important, though, is when we move to the 2021 budget that we do have that budget engagement process. And then that budget engagement process will actually be approved by this council and the timelines for that. So that you can make sure that your constituents who want to have input on how the 2021 budget should be shaped up, they'll be able to have that input, and more importantly, this council will be able to get that input while they're making their decisions. So to answer the first question, Councillor Huffman, with our limited resources, I'm not sure the benefit of going back to make presentations on the 2020 budget when, frankly, our budget is sideways. But I would recommend that we do this part of this, that we do the engagement on the user group, and that we look at our 2021 budget engagement process and have that approved by council. With regards to why this was an RFP, there's a strategic reason why we chose this way for the user groups, but I'll let Mr. Arlington explain that.
Thank you. Through Mayor Chop to Councillor Huffman. When we looked at the request for proposal process, we felt that following that procurement process would be much more restrictive than a call for submission process. That being said, when we evaluate an RFP, we're evaluating based on a price per point evaluation, and in the council approved policy, it's the lowest price per point award. What we wanted to do with the call for submission process was actually have an opportunity for a two-stage review and approval through council. So we would do the initial review, and then all submissions would come forward to council in a non-binding solicitation, and council would be under no obligation to approve, accept, or reject any submission. So it gives council some greater information and opportunity to determine what the next steps would be in the process. The RFP would lock us in much more significantly than the call for submission process.
Councillor, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Shelley, for that explanation. And just to follow up on Mr. Burgess's comment, certainly going forward, budget consultations is a great practice for us to have, and I know that many other municipalities do have these. So I'm glad to hear that we will be doing that. Unfortunately, I think, just going to call up the issue that we just discussed regarding sidewalks. There obviously was an appetite for a different outcome with constituents, and I think it was very clear from the first meeting, or the only meeting that we had in Langton, is that our community and our constituents are not in favor of that item that was voted on in the budget. Now, I specifically asked last week about making a motion in terms of discussing this budget item further, and I was told that I didn't need to worry about that because there would be further information coming at this meeting. And it's not the information that I was anticipating. So I just need to make my concerns known that I don't support any of this going forward. And if I could turn back time, I definitely would.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if this is going to be for our CAO or for Shelley, but how rigid is the November 10th, 2020 final date for these call for submissions? I guess I'll just ask that first, if you don't mind.
Through the mayor, as we've indicated in the report, this is an estimated timeline. If council wishes to direct something differently, then we can certainly take that direction and work on a revised timeline, keeping in mind what council's desires and wishes are.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. And Madam Mayor, if I can go further. One of the concerns that I've received a lot of communication about, and I'm sure that my colleagues have as well, is that I believe that there are user groups out there who can take on some of these projects and make these calls for submission in a very effective way. But I think that for many of them, they're facing this uncertain future with the pandemic, where they have the groups themselves have been unable to get together, to meet, to discuss, to plan, to write up anything. And I think that they are very fearful that they will, if and when the pandemic ends in this period of time that we're speaking about, that they will then not have the appropriate amount of time to make an appropriate submission that they feel comfortable with, and that they'll be rushed. And frankly, I believe some of them, they have little kids that are at home that should be in school, and they have a whole lot of other stressors in their life right now. And I do think that if we could possibly even, I'm going to suggest that perhaps we could even defer this report for some space of time, just to put a little bit more of a cushion in the process so that people can actually feel a bit more comfortable that they'll be able to do all of this in the appropriate way, rather than feeling that they're forced into something, or that they won't get a real opportunity to really put together a submission.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor, that's always council's discretion. The only thing I would caution is two things. One is we put, this was not an RFP process, so it's less formal, so it's easier for respondents, because these are not people who normally would respond to a more rigid RFP or tender process. So it's intended to be a bit more, or a lot more user-friendly for the user groups. Secondly, we put, a very long period of time for response. Frankly, this is much longer than you give engineering firms for $20 million projects and $30 million projects. And thirdly, just because a proposal comes in November doesn't mean they have to take over, come January 1st. It's likely that they're not taking over something till midway through the following year. The challenge, I think, for council is if we roll this much further to it, you're going to be making a budgetary decision of potentially looking for several $1 million worth of savings come December, when you're doing your finalized budget. And if we don't have any potential alternatives, this council may be forced to make some decisions that if they had some alternatives, they might choose something else than a cut or a tax increase. So we can push it past November, But my concern is then this council doesn't have another option to pull from. Then they're looking at either a budget hike to maintain a service or a budgetary cut to a service, which would mean a reduction in service. So that's why we had pushed for November, which, is late in the budget process, but would give this council some input from the community of things that they would actually get behind to support on these, frankly, important assets in the community.
Thank you, Jason.
I think if I could just jump in with that piece, I mean, there's nothing, we keep hearing in these emails and on social media that these various groups have all these great ideas and, and that they wanted to share these additional budget meetings. The budget meetings, unfortunately, because of COVID, they didn't get to happen, but now here's an opportunity to put their idea down on paper, and they've got enough time to be able to, I'm sure, reach out to staff if they need help navigating through the process of trying to put trying to formalize that idea that they have. And so now it's not just talk on social media anymore. There's an opportunity to put it down on paper and put something behind it that we can use come next fall. And again, if council doesn't like any of the proposals, nobody has to take the proposal. So there's no commitment today. It's just going out and trying to see, what options we have available. Councillor Columbus.
Yes, I was surprised to read here that we would only save $100,000 the first year, and the second year possibly $400,000. Is that across all our facilities, all our arenas and all our halls?
Yeah, through the chair, for a typical arena, the target would be about $150,000 per arena because as part of the proposal is we would subsidize any potential user. The other, so that's if it's a option one, which is the kind of operator scenario. Option two, which might just be a community support group. So in your community, Councillor Columbus, there's been a group that has approached us to support on a fundraising side of it, and that might set a different target. That might only be $50,000, but that's $50,000 we might never otherwise get. So it's hard to target it. The intent, we didn't put what we wanted to do is, as the report outlines, for hockey arenas, the anticipated subsidy for this year, if hockey operations were normal, taxpayers would have supported to the tune of about $1.7 million. And the intent is to reduce that amount. And it's up to council to decide with some of these proposals how much they want to reduce that amount by. But the intent of it was approximately $150,000 per arena. And if you remember the original budget documents, we were hoping to have potentially one arena there. And I believe we were looking for $150,000 for the community halls to be reduced by in year one. The original budget, you'd have to remember also, was it was never intended to be for a full year in year one, and it goes up in year two because it'd be for a full year.
Thank you for that. Second question, did we pass a motion at budget time that said we would be going through an RFP process? Was that on record anywhere?
We were going to engage a process to solicit interest from various user groups.
Did it say an RFP though? And if it did, do we have to rescind that motion or anything of that nature?
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, I'll ask for some direction from the county clerk, but as part of the budget deliberations, it indicated that staff issue RFPs for each arena to seek private or community operators, and that staff report on the RFPs by the end of June 2020. So I'll let the clerk speak to what needs to be reconsidered or not, but certainly this is staff's recommendation on steps that council can consider to move forward.
Through you, Mayor Chop, I guess one principle you want to consider is you never want to use council direction to the degree that it handcuffs staff to bring forward options. I mean, if you make a clear direction that you're not to do this or to do this certain course of action, but I wouldn't say that bringing forward a different type of procurement process that better enables the community members to to apply and participate rather than an RFP would be inherently against what council wanted in the budget process. I think council just wanted that process to begin, and the RFP was the terminology that they used, and staff have brought forward an improvement. The one thing I would note is that the June date, you do have a report before you today, but it doesn't really fulfill the requirement. You can change the June date to a later date. That's a simple amendment. One of the challenges is, though, you can't defer it indefinitely. There really was a decision that this would be done at some point this year for the next budget, and if you're putting off a decision too long, then you aren't going to meet that requirement.
So with this recommendation here, the option 2, do we not have to rescind the budget motion?
Fundamentally altering the motion is what
Okay.
Andy's getting at. I mean,
As long as we're doing things
it's essentially,
correctly,
it's the same motion. Staff's just made a suggestion to make it better for the user groups, but
yeah. I'd say it is better, sure.
Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure all the councilors saw some emails I sent out last week about this, that, and like the other part of that I was worried about is that the original motion says that we would close another arena in September, and that ain't going to happen either. So as long as it's legitimate that this is sort of a guidance, or we have to adjust it, rescind it, do whatever, you know, because of the COVID situation, we're just not able to even contemplate what we contemplated in January. There's a new proposal from staff in front of us that when I read it, we're just going to go out to the public and say, anybody got any ideas how to run things better? Let us know, and we'll look at it, and we'll see what we find, and hopefully we can have that done by November. I would personally put the little stipulation on there, if the situation is still such that we can't have open public meetings, we might have to look at it again, but, you know, at least we still have to start on it, because if we don't start on it, we're going to be stuck in budget times where we're going to be forced to do things worse than in the last budget without any public consultation, and that just ain't going to happen again, because we find ourselves in a predicament. We have to wiggle a way out of it, and I think the mayor's touched on it. You can't just automatically raise taxes or cut services. We want to find a better way. So as long as we're good with the clerk that we're not doing anything illegal, we don't want any more ombudsman, integrity commissioner, tribunals, lawsuits. We'd just like to get this done at some point.
Anything further from anyone? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Just a question while we're on the topic, maybe to Mr. Cridlin, or unless someone else can chime in. Can we just get a brief update on what is actually happening in these, specifically the arenas during COVID, and if there has been any discussions on summer ice and whatnot as it related to our budget discussion?
I'll start. If I make any errors, Mr. Cridlin's here with a suit and tie, even more impressive. All the municipal facilities are closed, so the arenas are not operational. One arena, as this council knows, is the operational site for our interim community center, or care center, I should say. So at current, there is no crystal ball that says whether, frankly, there's going to be minor hockey starting in September, and that's a concern that we have, and it's an operational concern for community and emergency services to deal with. So we are in discussions with the user groups on that. The plan is to accommodate, there is enough ice to accommodate the traditional user group times. There might be some changes in how we do things to accommodate everyone, but that is the plan going forward. We're planning for hockey in September, but that's beyond our control because that will be a decision by the province, not by, not by us. So.
Guess if I could elaborate a little further, are there plans? I know COVID. This is a loaded question because we don't know, but are we preparing to get ready to use summer ice? Should we be able to?
I believe there is the ability, if it pops up, we could have summer ice. I'll let Bill comment on that.
The reason why I ask it, I should just come right out with it, is that I've heard otherwise. And so I wondered if there was just a general update, if that's accurate or not. Obviously, COVID will decide for us, but a general update on what our plans are, if there's anything that council should be aware of with changes through summer ice in the arenas.
Thank you to the Mayor, to County Council. Yeah, all of the ice has been taken out of all arenas, so presently we don't have any. To put that back in, say, Waterford, the testing was done. We do have the ability to put the summer ice in. I think right now it just becomes a bit of a number game and time-wise, because we're going into June, and I think there will have to be a cutoff point where the programming wouldn't be there, and it would make no sense to put ice in if you didn't have that. So I think right now we're really looking at starting back up in September if possible. Summer ice, at least at our level, is probably not doable this year, just with the uncertainties with that.
Anything else, Councilor? No. Anything further? Councilor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. My question is maybe asking for a little bit more information on the two options that are before us. And to correct some misinformation that is out there, I've heard a lot of characterization as this is a privatization or a full privatization of our community facilities. And looking at option one, it's much more of a semi-private in terms of the operating subsidy. When I look at option two, it seems to be more of that 3P, that public-private partnership, less $150 operating subsidy. And so I guess my question is, what is really the two differences that are the largest differences between these two options? I was hoping for a comment on privatization in general, because that is a comment that is out there in the media and from our constituents. They're concerned about a private group and not a community group acquiring one of these assets. And from looking at these two options, it would seem that option two, it doesn't have that operating subsidy, and I'm trying to discern what is really the biggest differences between these two options, and what would that mean for us making a decision here today? If we were to pick one option over the other, does that mean that that other option is completely off the table unless a community group were to come up with an unsolicited proposal in the same vein? And so these are just some of the questions that I have, and I don't know who wants to attempt to answer them first, but I look forward to your response. Thank you.
I'll take first crack through the mayor. So when you look at privatization or P3s, you look at it through a lens twofold. One is most P3s are done to shift risk from the public sector to the private sector and to gain operational efficiencies or scale that the public sector may not have. So in the case of a licensed operation, there is some shifting of the risk. The operational risk is essentially capped by the municipality. So in this case, we would provide a subsidy of $150,000 to the private sector. If the losses are greater than that, then that's on the private sector or the community group. When I say private sector, it's anyone that's not the government. So it could be, frankly, it could be the Delhi Hockey Association that wants to run the Delhi Arena, and if they made money off of it, then that's the risk and reward transfers to them. If they lost money on it, the risk transfers to them. So when you look at P3, that's what it is. It's around who controls the asset and who controls the risks and rewards. Because we will always retain the asset in all these scenarios, it's really not a privatization because the full risks and the full rewards are not transferred to the private sector. The community partnership arrangement was put in, and that's not really a P3 because in that case, it would just be community groups looking to see if they could reduce the cost of the taxpayer through a much wider range of items other than operations. So this could be, there have been groups that have come forward that wanted to do fundraising for a specific facility, so they could do that. There would be certain groups that want to come forward and increase usage in a facility, so they would be essentially another prominent user of a facility. And that's where that one differs. That allows for some user groups to essentially look for sponsorship opportunities or other revenue opportunities for it. So option one is closer to a P3. Option two is closer to a community group absorbing some of the activities. If I go back through the, history of some of these facilities that we had, they were originally built sometimes by a community group, operated for a period of time by a community group, and then that community group could no longer operate those, and they got transferred to the municipality. So the option two allows some of the community groups to maybe come back and partake in that, or option one, they can essentially have some more operational oversight into the actual facility itself. So hopefully that addressed your question, Councillor Wright.
It did. Thank you, Jason. I'm not too sure if Shelley had anything to add in addition to that.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Rabbits. I think the CAO summarized that in good detail, but just direct back the comment that Councillor Van Passen made earlier. This is essentially going out to the community and individuals to come forward to council with information and ideas so that council can take a look at what those possible scenarios and solutions are, and council can provide further direction on where they want us to go with the proposals or the submissions that are submitted.
Sorry, Mayor. I do apologize. I did one of my notes, and I did forget. One of the other aspects, Councillor Rabbit, and this addresses some of the things that we heard in the public session. We also added a clause in there that if a community group did want to operate, we would actually extend management expertise into it, so they could actually hire staff to take on some of the operations, the more complex aspects of maybe an arena operation. That's something you would not normally see in a general P3, but it provides some support. So what I'd like to equate some of this to sometimes is, we have a curling facility here in Norfolk County that is it's a recreational item asset that is run by a community group. It's a not-for-profit organizational group. They do it. They have all the risks and rewards. And that would be the one extreme. Frankly, if someone undertook option one, they would be entering into essentially a license agreement with us where we pay them to operate a facility for a period of time. So just to provide an example, Councillor Rabbits, of a parallel option that already exists in the community.
Any further questions? Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. This question actually is for Mr. Cridlin in regards to discussions about summer ice. I just wanted to be clear that we're obviously here, we're not just speaking about hockey, and that figure skating is deemed phase one by the provincial government. So if figure skating is ready to go, are we prepared to say to them, we will not have any summer ice? So you will not be able to move forward with your program. Can you speak to that?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. Yeah, when I said that note, fully understanding that figure skating was announced that it could happen. I guess our dilemma as staff presently, we'd have social distancing. There would probably be infrastructure to put in the building. All that would come at a cost, or at least planning. We wouldn't know what that was yet. We haven't been approached by any figure skaters to say that they would want a summer program. Also, the thing with that is again, staffing, and I would almost imagine any program going ahead, your numbers would have to be reduced. Less people in the arena, less time on the ice themselves, and I know there's even talk with some of the coaches if they can't have, and I'm not an expert in figure skating, but if they have 5 or 6 people under their direction at once, if that's changed to 3 or 4, it changes that dynamic. So again, it's probably, I will backtrack, it's probably not my say as staff to say, will we have summer ice? I think operational wise, there's a lot of challenges, and I think we, especially with figure skating, we would have to have the request and then look through what the province would want, what we would need to instill in the arenas to move forward. And unfortunately, that may be months of work, that may be weeks of work, but still going into June, that tightens that timeline on summer ice. I hope that clarifies that.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're aware that we could be approached by a user group that would wanting to be using ice this summer, and what our decision would be, and what we were prepared to say. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, does somebody wish to move the staff recommendation that report ECS 20-06 proposal process for arenas and community halls be received as information, and that council exempt staff from Norfolk County Policy ECS-02 to permit a modified call for submissions process for arenas and community halls as outlined, and further that council direct staff to present the findings of all submissions that meet the minimum scoring requirements to council for review, further consideration, and direction. Moved by Councillor Michele, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. Oh.
I'd like to amend that a little bit, Madam Mayor, that the second recommendation, delete the words "that meet the minimum scoring requirements." I'd like to see any submission, like great staff go through them, score them. I want to see them all anyway. So.
Okay, Councillor Michele, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any further debate on that?
Forgot. All right. Councillor Geisens.
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus. Councillor Michele.
Yes.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
Carries.
Okay, and moving on, last report, FS 20-19, COVID-19 response options and cost estimates.
Thank you, Mayor, to Council. The report before you just outlined some of the costs that have been incurred. I note as staff, once COVID-19 started and the EOC was set up, there were special codes set up for staff to charge their time. As of May 1st, salary costs, exceed $2.4 million just on salary cost. To be clear, that's not necessarily a budget variance because we would have paid those salaries, but wanted to understand that in many cases, or in almost all cases, workers are doing COVID-19 activities that they would not have normally incurred, so other work is not being done because of those activities. The nature of the report, we wanted to highlight a few of the expenses that that we are incurring. The biggest expense is PPE. So we're approaching $1 million of PPE spend or commitment to spend for this. We got kind of a double whammy, to be fair. We had stored we had bought some PPE in prior years. We had high levels of inventory, and we didn't put a budgetary line item for normal PPE usage. So we, essentially didn't budget for PPE usage because we were using prior inventory levels. So everything that we're buying essentially is a negative budget variance. Its approach will have to change from a budgetary approach. We need to budget what our actual expenditures are, whether we're pulling it out of inventory or not. But that's sitting at $854,000 today, and that's only going to go up. And as we move into phase 2 and phase 3 of the province opening, we're going to be required to, as Bill said, any service we open up, we have to buy PPE, we have to buy shields for our staff, we have to do wireless ATM machines, we have to add more gloves, more gowns, more face shields. So as we open up, the PPE expense is probably going to increase also. By law enforcement, this county took a very a very positive stance on ensuring that we deploy bylaw resources to ensure proper social distancing and to effectuate the program from public health. As you can see in the report, our estimated cost currently is running at about $86,000, which is above what we would normally spend of about $41,000. In addition to that, just the amount of bylaw that we've deployed for the farm worker program. This is just bylaw. This doesn't count the other 30 staff. It's almost another $72,000 to facilitate that program. The interim care center, the estimated startup cost was about $182,000. and it's about $20,000 a month to keep that going. Other costs which we've outlined in the report are significant. You know, there's about over $200,000 of other costs, because as we operate, we have to do things to ensure safety for the public and safety for our staff. So one of the things that from a public health point of view across the province, and you just saw the new rules come in for cab drivers and Uber drivers, is that if you have two in a car, they must wear PPE. What we've been doing is trying to limit the number of times workers are forced to be two in a car, so we've essentially leased more vehicles to avoid that. We've changed how they work. We've done a whole bunch of items to increase safety and also look at ways to reduce further costs. But at the end of the day, we're into a new normal, and the new normal is probably going to put a budgetary hit, north of $2 million into our budget that we did not count on. And could it rise to even more than $2 million? Yes. What we've done as SLT is, our senior leadership team, is that we've already started taking measures to reduce costs in a number of areas. And some of those cost controls are centralizing procurement, ensuring that, cutting back on things that we can buy or deferring certain aspects. None of that will actually save the $2 million. Like, we're not going to get close to the $2 million. So staff have to undertake, further review of some of our expenditures and come back to this council. The tough decision that, we have to make is whether we, for example, reduce our bylaw enforcement approach at this point in time. And do you allow, I gave the statistics. So on Saturday, we gave well over 200 verbal warnings to people to get off the beaches or to socially distance and that kind of stuff. We could have less bylaw enforcement, and it increases the risks of a transmission, and what's the cost at that point in time. Those are some of the decisions that, both staff and this council will have to take a look at, because we won't be able to, frankly, absorb this budgetary amount that's going to create the hole in our budget. We will, in July, present updated numbers to this council as at the end of May. Unfortunately, our financial system is clunky and takes 6 weeks to get good numbers out of it. But we'll be in a better position to tell you, to better forecast what our budgetary hit is and what some of the measures will be going forward. So the intent of the report is to tell you that we are running a fairly significant negative budget variance. Some of these things will continue for the rest of the year. And any of the cost measures we've taken to date does not mitigate the full amount of the negative budget variance, and we'll have to take more cost containment measures.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Jason, I'm really pleased to hear that you're looking at some cost containment measures, because these numbers are startling. Is there any movement by the federal or provincial government to offer assistance to municipalities at this time? Or did we already receive some dollars for some of these things?
Thank you through the mayor to the councilor. We received some money, but that was program money that had to be distributed to individuals in need. We've received top-up money for certain salary or for certain wage, like EMS technician, like paramedics and that kind of stuff. But there has been no money received to reimburse municipal costs at this point in time. And there's an expectation of that, but there has been nothing substantial, and I think the cost would be pretty significant for either the federal or provincial government to step up. There is discussion from the provincial government to increase the acceptances of running a deficit. The challenge with running a deficit, especially for this county, is in most cases you have a rainy day fund that you pull from your reserve, and you take your hit and you move on and you carry on. This council is doesn't really have the rainy day fund. So even if they allow a deficit, all that's really doing is you're kicking your problem down the road one more year.
So I don't know what's happening with AMO this year. It's probably a virtual meeting, I would think. Should we not be putting, municipalities should not be putting a message forward through AMO requesting some financial assistance to our municipal expenses?
AMO is working on it. FCM is also working on it. There was I forget the gentleman's name. He's an MP from Hamilton, asked the question directly to the deputy minister last week with regards to a direct relief for municipal funds. The answer was, yes, the federal government understands the issue and appreciates the issue, and they will review the issue.
Okay, my second question is with respect to this bylaw enforcement, the migrant farm compliance team, 10 persons involved there at a cost of $72,000 monthly. And we all received this batch of paper with all the farmers' concerns. Most of them talk about the fact that they've had visits from various organizations and our health unit staff and our bylaw officers several times. I had one lady call me this morning, 5 times in 2 weeks they were visited, same questions being asked. Here's one of our leading edge farmers just gave this to me. We have needlessly invested hundreds of hours in working with inspectors to get isolation plan approvals, meeting with bylaw officers who ask questions that we have already answered multiple times, answering phone calls from health unit staff, constantly keeping up with ever-changing and sometimes conflicting county requirements and threats, and reading and writing pointless emails and completing paperwork. I've heard this over and over and over again. Can we not cut that section right out and save $72,000 a month? Seems like it's over-regulation. These people, as you heard from Hayden Duty, they're honest people. These people come back year after year. Some of them have been here 30 years. Why are we over-policing this whole program? There's a way to cut some money right now, $72,000. And I think it should be in the motion. We could start right there.
Through the chair, I can't address all the specifics of it. There was, when the enforcement program was put in, and I hate to use the term enforcement program, what we found out later is the federal government is actually also doing follow-ups with farmers, so now you get multiple levels of government doing it. At the time, frankly, when this was designed, there was no hint that the federal government was doing the regulations. There may be a requirement for the farmers that for them to receive their $1,500 from the federal government, that they have to require proof of a successful quarantine of the workers. Our public health system will give that actual proof because we actually request that the farmers do their daily health checks, they complete a form, and they send it to us. Most cases, the compliance rate is very high. We get the update on a daily basis. It's well over 95% that the farmers are complying with it. Sometimes we have to call them to say, did you guys fly in? What time did they land? And just give us the form type of thing. It is an area you can, it is an area that can be reduced. It'd be something that, again, those costs are being funneled through the health unit. So from a pure Norfolk County point of view, 60% of those costs would rest with us, in case 40% would rest with Haldimand County because it's considered a health unit cost in that case. But we are looking at ways to reduce that, and as the workers work through it, we can certainly take that back to public health staff to see if we can reduce some of that compliance.
Well, Mr. Burgess, I'd like to add it right into the motion today, and I've got the wording for it, and that the migrant farm compliant team consisting of 9 employees redeployed from other community departments be deployed back to their former positions. That's what I would add as an amendment to what reads in here, just to cut the red tape and overregulation.
Through the chair, that would put me in a difficult position because that's a requirement from the medical officer of health to effectuate his program. So what I would if council would allow it, what I'd prefer to do is instead of taking a direction I might not be able to actually execute, I think I've heard you loud and clear, and I think we can replay this for the public health team, that we take a look to minimize the efforts in that front, and then I can report back to you next month of what efforts we've reduced.
I will count on you to proceed that way then. Thank you very much. Friendly amendment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to follow up on that, I hope everybody understands the frustration with the farmers that we're spending $72,000 a month to inspect and harass the honest people. And at the same time, you issued 250 warnings in Dover for people breaking the law, because otherwise you wouldn't have given them a warning. And for what I understand out of the provincial legislation, that's $800 tickets. And 250 times $800 is $200,000 worth of tickets you forego in Dover for people breaking the law, but we're more than willing to spend $72,000 to chase down farmers who aren't doing anything wrong. So, yeah, I can understand their frustration some days.
My mic wasn't on. Councillor Hoffman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Shaw. Through you to Mr. Burgess. I've had members of the community approach me regarding the, for lack of a better word, I guess the field hospital in Port Dover. And one of the recommendations, I know this may be a little bit of nickel and diming, but are the porta potties still in Port Dover?
Thank you, through the chair. No, we're demobilizing that site. So what we're trying to be put in a position too is so that we can remobilize it within 72 hours if required. Porta potties we've canceled that contract. Whether they've all been removed, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they've all been removed at this point in time. We took a number of other measures to demobilize the site. But to be clear, we won't never get rid of all the costs, because we need to be in a position that if we need to set it up again within 72 hours notice, we can get it back to the medical officer health standards to respond to a crisis.
I appreciate that, but I think in terms of the porta potties, they would be able to be redeployed fairly quickly. I don't think we need 72 hours to get some porta potties back in place.
Yeah, they were canceled.
Just a suggestion from the community as to a way to save money.
Yeah, they were canceled. I think they were canceled a few weeks ago when we were looking at cost.
Sorry, when were they canceled, Shelley? 2 weeks ago they were canceled. Any further questions? Councillor Taylor, did I see your hand? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I'm just wondering if we know how many overtime hours have been worked, or is that a question for 6 weeks when the numbers come in more concrete?
Thank you, through the chair. Well, I've requested overtime hour analysis, and it is something that we're going to obtain, and we'll be in a better position to answer that question in 6 weeks' time. I will say, just for the benefit of council so that they understand, we've done a lot of work changes with the union. So we would have people who would normally work 5 8-hour days. We've asked them now to work 4 10-hour days. We've asked people to move outside their jobs. We've tried to, but in many of the collective agreements, if someone was normally a 35-hour work person and we've now moved them up to 40 hours a week, there are overtime hours incurred. In some of our other contracts, people aren't scheduled to work weekends, and now we're making them work weekends, and there's implications to that. So we've worked with the unions to try to reduce those costs. We can't reduce them all, and there is some significant overtime costs incurred on this.
Thank you. Looking forward to those numbers when they come in.
Did you want to speak to the changes with bylaw at all, or? Okay. I'll let it go. Any further questions? Councillor Van Passen.
I guess it's the bigger picture question. Like normally in the summer Bill's department, you run a lot of the summer programs, the kids programs. what is the drop dead date to sort of kick that into gear? Like, I'm sure that we're not going to be hiring summer students if we don't know if we need them, but where is the point where it's too late to kick that into gear, and what point do we need to know from the province whether they're going to allow us to do X things? And
I'll start, and I'll have Mr. Cridlin on the specific program. So with regards to students, we notified all our students. Many municipalities had just canceled the student program earlier. We notified our students that we would not be hiring them. We deferred any decision till after July 1st long weekend. We are meeting as staff this week on Wednesday to discuss what we're going to move forward. We are limited with our ability to hire students because we have unionized members that are on declared emergency leave. So it'd be very difficult to hire a student back unless there's a very specific situation without people who are on essentially layoff, us bringing them back. With regards to programming, Bill's team is looking at potentially running some virtual programming at this point in time, and his team's working on that, but I'm not sure what he would consider as the drop dead date for rec programming.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, the County Council. Registration for museums as well as rec would probably be closed about now for the summer. So what we're doing is we've had one meeting, we have another meeting tomorrow, and we're combining the library and the talks of the museum and the rec folks, because we're kind of trying to get a need analysis of what the community wants. Haven't did any formal surveys, but I've had a lot of parents say anything you can do will help. They don't want their children watching more TV, but if it was something educational or something put them with the county, it would be wanted. So what we're hoping to do is probably as early as next week, make the announcement on the traditional summer programming for rec and museums. Won't happen, and here is our alternative, and it will be something online, virtual, that way, and we have a lot of details to work out, but I think aligning with the library, museums, and rec, then we can plan what we put out so we don't have the same afternoon, everything going out that time, that we can space this through. So that's the plan on that.
will there be a need to adjust the costs of that? We try to work on that cost recovery or percentage thereof, but if, groups have to be smaller and all that, will the prices for the individuals be increased or adjusted, or?
Through the Mayor to County Council. That's a very good question, because traditional day camps, 3-4 leaders, a lot of costs going out. When you go online with something like this, you are competing with other organizations that do the same thing. I know I've heard that the Toronto Zoo had a successful camp the other day. I didn't have time to watch it, but a lot of those programs are free. You just have to get people to know that they're on. So I'm not sure how the pricing will work, but it's going to have to probably be very low cost, but our input cost will be very low as well.
Oh, Councilor Martin, sorry.
It's okay. Thanks, Mayor Chop. If I could just add not a question, but just a comment to you, Mr. Cridlin. I was speaking with a business owner in the community, and they made a fabulous point that I had not even given consideration to. We were discussing how Norfolk County could help business owners moving forward when they're in a position to do business a bit more business as usual. And one of the points that was made was to continue investigating ways that we could offer these day camps because it was a means for employees to get back to work as well, to put their kids somewhere in a safe environment. So I know a lot of municipalities are not hosting any programs at all. A lot are going virtual, but I just thought I would mention that while we're on the subject, because I think it's a great point and it's going to facilitate employees getting back to work as well.
Further questions? Okay, so understanding your, Councillor Columbus, we're fine to leave that as direction for this week, and we'll revisit it at the next meeting. So I just need a mover and a seconder that staff report FS 20-19 COVID-19 response options and cost estimates B, received as information that council directs staff to continue to work with the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit and the MOH to identify opportunities to reduce cost in areas in which the community are not in areas in which the risks to the community are not materially increased. And further, that staff be directed to report back to council in June with identified cost reductions. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Michele. Any further discussion? Sorry, Councillor Huffman, were you seconding? Okay. Seconded by Councillor Huffman. Any further discussion?
Councillor Taylor and I were having a seconder off here.
Okay. There's a little delay on this end, so it's just... Okay, any discussion? All those in... Oh, sorry.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Yes.
Councillor Martin. What's going on with these mics? Councillor Van Passen. Yes. 2. Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Councillor Geisens. Councillor Geisens?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Michele?
Yes.
Mayor Chop?
Yes.
Motion carries. Sorry.
Okay, next motion moved by Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Columbus, that bylaws 10Z 2020, bylaw 11Z 2020, bylaw 20-29, bylaw 2020-34 to bylaw 2020-45 inclusive be approved, signed by the mayor and clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. Councillor Michele. Which one? Which one, sorry? 2020,
Sorry, 2020-45.
okay, so we're moving 2020-45. Moved by Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? And that's carried. Go ahead, Councillor Michele.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted that one to be voted separately so that it was not included with the others.
Okay, did you have something you wanted to say about it?
No.
Hang on 1 second. Okay. In this case, why don't we do, did you wish to have, Councillor Van Passen?
Councillor Michele has no other comments. I'd like to move the approval of that because I probably moved for approval of bylaw 4198 in the city of Nanticoke back in the day. So.
Okay, so you'd like to move that, seconded by Councillor Rabbits, and did you want a recorded vote here, or can?
I think so, Madam Mayor. Thank you. That's kind of the reason I'm sort of making this separate.
All right. Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Michele.
No.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes.
Councillor Martin. Yes. Councillor Taylor.
Just to be clear, this is bylaw 2020-45?
Yes.
Yes, this is a de-designation.
Okay, yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Oh. Yes.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
Oh, and sorry, Councillor Geisens.
Yes. Yes.
Motion carries.
And again, yes.
Okay, moving on, I guess two things. One, there was the other item in other business that we were going to handle, so it might be prudent to do that before we go into closed session. But the other item, is there a reason that we couldn't handle this other item in open session? If we're leaving the names off of it? Okay, so let's handle the land conveyance here. Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Actually, I believe this report can go in open session, so I'll just present the report if that's okay. Through the mayor to members of council.
Thinking maybe just leave the names out of it.
Sure. So this report is seeking approval for the conveyance of a remaining closed portion of William Road. Council approved the closure of this unopened road allowance back in 2008, and the one abutting property owner showed no interest at the time that the report came forward. So the remaining portion is available, and the county has maintained that, not maintained, but retained ownership of that unopened portion of road allowance. Staff are recommending that the valuation established in 2014 be used for this portion of road allowance. The individual has requested a reduction in the selling price, and that is outlined in the report for council. Again, staff are recommending that the remaining closed portion of William Road be conveyed and at a valuation approved in 2014 of $1.25 per square foot. And with that, staff are happy to answer any questions.
I looked up the average, I mean, I know it's a small piece, but as council moved in our budget deliberations to look at selling off land and infilling in particular areas, I know the frontage isn't that great on it, but looking at what some lot frontages are sitting at nowadays, it is still within the realm of it potentially being an odd lot. Was that ever considered? And I feel like it would have been worth more than the 8,000.
Through the mayor, certainly we can take a look at the valuation, but these are the rates that were previously established. And I think when we consider the future land monetization report, we'll bring forward a further report on road allowance valuations for council to consider.
Councillor Columbus.
So, Shelley, has the interested party, they're aware of the price that you're proposing?
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, the individual is aware of the price recommended in the report, but has indicated that they wish to seek a reduction in the selling price from council and revert back to the 2008 selling price at the time.
I'm quite familiar with this property. It's basically swamp land. This former road was supposed to be put through there. It's the lowest part of that section, and it's going to need an awful lot of fill once they apply for a building permit to build anything there. It's a pretty rough piece of property.
That makes me feel better. Thank you. Councillor Shelley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Originally, I was of the same mind as you. I thought that this was a pretty decent package of land for that price. There is, as Councillor Columbus knows, there's a similar size, I think slightly bigger lot for sale in Delhi on the main street, which I know is being asked for considerably more money. But I do take Councillor Columbus's point that I think this is not exactly like a regular lot that you and I would be thinking about. It's almost constantly covered with water, and I know they're going to have to do a lot of work with it. Having said that, I do think that the current price that they're being offered is quite fair.
Van Passen.
I don't know if Shelley knows any details on this, but if that was in an urban zoning, a 66-foot lot is buildable. If it's in a hamlet zoning, you need 100 foot or 99 feet. So it's, again, it's not technically a lot. You could go ask for some adjustments, but from what I've read of the report, this has been going on for 10 or more years. It's cleaning up the mess. I'm sure that you've made these offers back and forth over the years, and Councillor Columbus probably knows all about it. And just to get it off the books, I'm not going to haggle on the price. If that's what they agreed to in 2014. Let's get it off and done. Right?
Councillor Martin, did you? No. Anyone else? Okay, so the staff recommendation, that report ECS 20-07, conveyance of the remaining closed portion of William Road, Plan 475, Norfolk County, be received as information, and that the remaining closed portion of William Road, Plan 475, Norfolk County, be conveyed to the individuals at a valuation of $8,276 plus HST and all other associated costs. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Columbus. Any further discussion? And
Councillor Geisens.
Councillor Geisens. Hello. Hello, Geisens. Yes.
Yes, okay. Councillor Rabbit.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes.
Councillor Michele.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, good job. I think we just saved 20 minutes there at least. Other business, Councillor Michele.
Madam Mayor, I'm just double checking the issue I raised earlier about the report by the
You would need to,
do I need to do that here, or are we okay with what we did before?
you'd either need to ask for notice of motion for the next meeting, or you could ask council to waive the procedural rules of order now.
Okay, considering these uncertain times, I would like to ask if council will be agreeable to waive the regular procedural rules of order.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Martin?
Madam Mayor, I wonder if it would be helpful to council just to review what it is that we are doing.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I'm referring back to the communications item 4A regarding the commentary that we had and the discussion we had about the Integrity Commissioner's report. And it was suggested at the time that when we discussed earlier tonight that the CAO prepare a report to address some of the main features and main points made in the report, so that we can have perhaps a little bit better understanding of where council is with regard to some of the criticisms, I guess I will say, that were in the report.
Oh, I'll do the recorded vote then. Yeah. All right, Councillor Geisens.
Yes.
Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Columbus.
Yes.
Michele.
Yes.
Van Passen.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Huffman.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
Carried.
Over to you again, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Shelley, sorry, I'm just so tired right now.
Yeah, I know the
My
feeling.
apologies.
Is this still the Board of Health? All right. All right, so I am making the motion to direct staff, our CAO in particular, to bring back a report addressing the main points contained in the Integrity Commissioner's report that we received at our last council meeting of April the 28th.
Councillor Van Passen.
I have a question, Madam Mayor. What are we doing? Are we reconsidering the report from the last meeting, and we're going to, like we had already received information, are we bringing it back on the floor so it's up for fair game to discuss it, or are we just nitpicking little details out of it? or
Well, I
bringing
think
up
there
new
was
ones?
concerns from two of the counselors at the meeting that specifically were concerned about Mr. Mascaren's statements in terms of the anonymity of the complainant, the fee that was being charged, and there was a third thing. I can't remember the other. Which one? The open meeting issue was the third. So I guess this would be the opportunity to go and have some perspective on how other municipalities are doing things and so on. And then at that point in time, when that comes back, you guys, we can all have a debate on what we want to do with those items. Doesn't bother me in the least.
And
I actually
Madam
was
Mayor-
hoping you were going to put the motion on the floor, Councillor Columbus, that week when you said it, you didn't feel it was going to pass.
Well, that's exactly what I asked for, but then my iPad and that went screwy on me, so I got fed up and gave up.
And Madam Mayor, that's partly the reason why I think I would like to have just a report by the CAO on it to revisit parts of it, because I do recall, in fact, I think a couple of other councillors who were participating virtually also were not quite clear about some of the discussion that was had then. So this will give us an opportunity to have I hope, a more fulsome discussion and opportunity to examine it.
Second, Councillor Michelle's motion.
Very well. Further discussion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would ask them, like, if we want to talk about parts of this report, I want to talk about the whole report. So, like, I take a little bit exception to the Integrity Commissioner trying to rewrite history and make statements that, he is a lawyer, I got to be careful. I remember distinctly differently than he did. He's suggesting that one of his recommendations is he's mad that we took away the right of the Integrity Commissioner to impose penalty. The one complaint he investigated, he is the one who broke the rules by delegating the authority to give out the penalty. He gave that up and gave it to council. So I just assumed he must think it's okay because he didn't do it himself. He told council to reprimand the mayor. Council did reprimand the mayor. Council asked the mayor to apologize. Council accepted that apology. And then the Integrity Commissioner comes back with a supplementary report. I don't know how much it cost for him to do the supplementary report because he didn't like the way the mayor apologized for an apology he never asked for because he delegated the authority to ask for penalty, which he is not allowed to do by the law. If that's kind of recommendations that he wants to give out, that he can break the law but nobody else can, I don't know why we should be following or be worried about those kind of recommendations. And like I say, I would say that if we were brought this up for reconsideration, but if we're just sort of nitpicking ideas out of it, what's the point of that? You can do that any day. That you don't need to nitpick things out of the report. You just want to amend the bylaw that we wrote and we accepted. And you could bring that up anytime. You don't have to, bring it up as part of this report. You can just do it as part of the regular housekeeping of our own rules and regulations that we create and we try to follow, even though some people can't really understand them.
Thank you, Councillor Van Passen. I think Mr. Burgess has something to add.
Through the mayor to council, and I understand Councillor Van Passen's point, if I may make a suggestion, there was parts of the report which provided an opinion on different approaches that a council can take with regards to how they want to conduct, and we could obtain a report, and I will probably use outside advice on some of that to provide this council with some advice with regards to issues such as, should a person who makes an accusation be named or not named, and you can get some greater clarity on that. This council only received the report. That was the only recommendation it did. At any point in time, this council can then choose to discuss the report more fulsome at a later date. It's been received, but it has not been debated. So my suggestion is once council receives my report on some of the more critical factors, then this council then can choose, as Councilor Van Passen says, you can go back to review the report at that point in time.
Madam Mayor, this bylaw was created by the previous council in 2018. We used it once. We found out it was too complicated because the integrity commissioner couldn't understand it. So we adjusted the rules to allow him to understand it. And now we will be imposing the penalty the integrity commissioner recommends to the council, whether there has been a violation of the rule, and we will impose the penalty. That was decided in 2019. And now we're going to waste more staff time because we're second guessing it because that was a recommendation in the report. It's only been around 2 years. We've changed it twice already. I don't think there's a need to waste your time on it. I think we've got a lot more important things to deal with right now than little nitpicky things like that. We have rules in place that seem to be working, and I just don't want to waste your time.
Councillor Hoffman, I think I saw your hand. Councillor Hoffman?
No, not me. I just said this, so I go home.
Oh, sorry, hang on, I just need it. If I could, just a quick timeout, I just need a motion that notwithstanding the procedural bylaw, council can proceed past the hour of 9 p.m. to complete the business at hand. Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Van Passen, actually, I need a full vote all around for this one. So, all those in favor? Okay, that's carried. So Councillor Hoffman, did you have your hand up?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mayor Chop. Yes, I did, and then I got a little confused by what Councillor Van Passen was saying. There were a lot more aspects, though, to that report. I don't know why we're focusing on just this one issue. And so I just wanted to clarify, because there seems to be a lot of confusion, as there was at the last meeting, regarding discussion about that. So my understanding is that Mr. Burgess will be bringing forward a report, and then we will have a time as a council to discuss some of the concerns in the report from the integrity commissioner. Is that correct?
It's the way I'm understanding it. Councillor Michelle's nodding his head. 1 second. Yeah, okay. Councillor Van Passen.
It's like, I got the report right in front of me. I don't think I'm confused about what I'm talking about.
I didn't mean you were, what? Councillor Michelle, anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think anyone was suggesting that Councillor Van Passen is confused. I think that Councillor Huffman was just trying to get some clarity about what it is, and I suspect I'm just starting to recall now our discussion about the same topic. Maybe the electronic media does not like this topic because it's where I think we get a few glitches between when someone says virtually and what someone says on the live feed. And I think that was one of the reasons why I thought we should bring up some of this. I just want to add that there were some sections with that report that suggested that council had that all of council had behaved in some kind of untoward fashion, and I frankly I would like to know, like it was so vague, but at the same time so accusatory. I thought, you know what, I wouldn't mind having a little bit more clarity about what some of those, what I thought were significant sections, were really referring to.
Okay. Councillor Hoffman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. And just to clarify and agree with Councillor Michelle, Councillor Van Passen, in no way, shape, or form was I implying that you were confused. It was confusing trying to listen to this. And secondly, I appreciate, Councillor Michelle, your willingness to discuss this further, as that was my intent at our last meeting, was that there was some important information in there, and I felt it prudent that we discuss it. So I'm very interested in discussing this at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, can we call the vote? Oh, sorry, that was moved by Councillor Michelli. I think I need a seconder still. Oh, Councillor Columbus, that's right.
Councillor Geisens.
Hello, 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 I'm here.
How do you vote, Councillor Geisens?
Sorry?
How do you vote, Councillor Geisens? Oh, sorry. That the CAO be directed to bring back a report on the annual report from the Integrity Commissioner.
Yes, I know the...
Councillor
Yes, I know
Rabbits.
that, so thank
Yes.
you.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Michelli.
Yes.
Councillor Van Passen.
No.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Huffman.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, other business. Anybody for other business? I'll just look for a hand. Councillor Rabbits.
I have a question, and thank you, through you. During these times, it's a little uncertain when we are meeting, and I have frequently been asked, is it this Tuesday, is it next Tuesday? And I was hoping we might be able to nail down our next meeting date. And if not, when do you think we would all find out when that might be?
I think what we discussed at the last meeting was that we were getting back to kind of regular schedule-ish for June, were we not?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Chop. So I've been working on the calendar, and I hope to have a calendar for the rest of the year, tentatively. But right now, it sounds like we will be back here with just the Board of Health on June 2nd, because there's no public hearing that day. June 9th, we'd be back here for CIC, and then we'll have the council the following week. So hopefully it'll be a regular slate. And also, there's a memo in the info pack where I kind of discussed that we are planning to allow all of the advisory committees to start holding only electronic meetings starting in June. So we will get the advisory committees all back up to speed and running as well, which I think will hopefully please a lot of them, and we'll have guidance documents out there for them later this week.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Columbus?
Well, I just want to say that I think this meeting demonstrated great democracy, a lot of open discussion and great debate. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going what? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. A couple of things. Firstly, tomorrow, if you are a business owner in the Ward 6 Port Dover Woodhouse community at 11 in the morning, I'm having a live video chat with the one and only Mr. Burgess. And we're just having open discussion with business owners, soliciting some feedback how the county can help you moving forward with reopening or just better serving your business through COVID. And we will bring that back to council and a recovery committee. And then there's also one for all of Norfolk County for any other business owner who wishes to participate, and that is happening on Thursday at 7 p.m. live video chat. So I have the links for those. If anyone is interested, they can reach out to me by email or social media and get those links and join in. And otherwise, I wanted to pose a couple of questions and just touch base on some public work issues with Mr. Godby. So maybe I'll let anyone else go and then listen to your update and see if my projects are in your update. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, another piece on the business topic, good news released today from Venture Norfolk for our small businesses that are unable to access existing federal relief measures. They can now apply for funding through Venture Norfolk under a new initiative. I'll just read it out as it's probably the easiest way. Small businesses are at the heart of our economy, and many are vital to this community. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in uncertainty and anxiety for businesses and their employees. This is where the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund comes in. With $962 million nationally, the new fund will support businesses that are unable to access the Government of Canada's existing relief measures and enhance access to capital for rural businesses. Funding available through Venture Norfolk. In order to provide targeted assistance to the small towns and communities we serve, Venture Norfolk will focus on assisting Main Street businesses such as retail shops, restaurants, corner stores, and businesses of strategic importance to our communities with 0% interest loans up to $40,000. If the loan is repaid in full before December 31st, 2022, 25% of the loan will be forgiven. So that's great news for our small businesses in Norfolk County, and big thanks to Venture Norfolk. And I guess if there's nothing further? Oh, Councillor Taylor, I'm sorry.
No problem. Just wondering if Mr. Godby's still around.
He's here.
He's here, perfect. I was wondering if you'd be able to go over the rules around the bulky item pickup, because that's coming up pretty quick and starting in Ward 5 there. So just wondering if you could give us that overview.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Councillor Taylor and all of council and everybody listening at home. The bulky item pickup program will be kicking off in June. So we're looking at June 1st to June 5th. Will be Zone A, which is essentially Ward 5. June 8th through 12th, Zone B, which is Ward 6 and 7. June 15th through the 19th is Zone C, being Wards 3 and 4. June 26th through the June 22nd through the 26th, Zone D, which is Wards 1 and 2. All of this information is available on our county website, but I'll quickly give you the highlight of it. Basically, first and foremost, any items put out to the curb must be able to be lifted by 2 people. So if it takes you, a crane or a tractor to move it out there, the staff that are coming around in the trucks to pick these things up, they will not be able to do it either. So carefully with that, liftable by 2 people. We are saying 2 cubic meters of debris or materials. This equates to, if you were to try and visualize, about a pickup load worth of large items. All items need to be placed out at the curb by 7 a.m. on the Monday of your designated pickup week. There is significant amount of information on materials that are and are not accepted. I would encourage everyone to refer to the county's website for this. Essentially, commercial items, construction materials, those kind of things are not being picked up, nor will any of the items that would normally go through an e-waste program or any of the household hazardous waste type items, old paint cans and stuff like that. We have separate programs which will be run in order to address those things. I believe that kind of gives a general overview of everything for the bulky item program. Again, the month of June, and the website has all kinds of information, maps, and details on there.
Sorry, I just forgot one thing that we had received. We got a letter from the Children's Aid Society of Haldeman and Norfolk, and they're just wanting to remind the community, especially with the COVID-19 emergency going on, that they are out there and available 24/7. If anybody has any inquiries, you can call them at 519-587-5437 or 1-888-CAS-KIDS. So you keep on looking out for CSA. For Children's Aid Society of Haldeman and Norfolk and the great work that they do for us.
Thanks, Andy. Any others?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will apologize to everyone for this right off the hop because last month I had mentioned about bringing back some updates on various public works projects. So I have approximately 8 pages. It's a matter of how in-depth you want to go. I can summarize a number of things very generally for all the public at home. We have recently awarded some reconstruction of some existing sidewalks. Some of these Specifically our Ewell Street in Delhi, Gibraltar Street in Delhi, portion of Norfolk Street South and Norfolk Street North in Simcoe, and Chapman Street West in Port Dover. Those are replacements of existing. We have various projects. All the carryovers from last construction season are actively being worked on to get that top lift of asphalt done and completed, the landscape restorations, driveways, all that work that those people who live in those areas are probably sat all winter wondering when it was going to be done. Those projects are still proceeding forward. We're trying to work to get that done as quickly as possible, as are the contractors. As it relates to the Port Dover water treatment plant, I guess just a heads up, we've been receiving lots of inquiries about the status of that. I do anticipate that next meeting we will have a more thorough update to share with council and with the rest of the public as to where exactly that project stands. I will keep going here for one moment because the Long Point Causeway, the bridge construction, the tender documentations are pretty much complete. We will be looking to post that tender by the end of this month. And they're looking at pending favorable results of that tender that we would be looking to start some construction in 2020 already. Again, as that project proceeds, you will have, I will continue to bring more details. Of note, the Queensway Bridge by the Tim Hortons in Simcoe, it's currently in the EA phase of its progress. We essentially need to narrow down some of the various options that will be available for the replacement of that bridge. And essentially, I'm just mentioning this one as this may be one of the first more virtual public information centers that we will be working on. We've got staff with the engineering firm, with our own engineering department and our communications department have kind of been bouncing various things off as to how we're going to pull this one off, but we will have more to come on that, and you'll see something interesting come out of this, I'm sure. And those residents in Port Dover may have noticed that the Meisner Dam, we did award that contract. That work is scheduled to begin next month. We are currently finalizing some details with the contractor there for the rehabilitation of that structure. Councillor Martin did give me a heads up on a few of these things, so I can just go right to those being, there was a deputation identified in the council action items list that was actually by a gentleman back in January of 2019. Unfortunately, this item has continually kind of tripped down the road and not really been addressed. Staff will be at some point bringing back a report on a more fulsome report on sidewalks in general for council's consideration. The issue that we had with this particular deputation, it was regarding sidewalks on Cockshut Road from Swan Street to Dover Mills and on Dover Mills from Cockshut to Prospect. Specifically relating to this, the section of Dover Mills from Cockshut to Prospect is currently going to be entering design stage in 2021, 2022. Reconstruction is currently proposed, so we'll be looking to try and clean that up and address some of those issues at that time. The other stretch to the south, we'll need to be looking at what what we can do there, knowing, again, we're into an area with roadside ditches, and it will be more of an extensive project than we currently have budget for. So a lot of these issues will be brought back up at a future date. One of the major concerns.
Sorry, Mayor Chop, may I, sorry to interrupt you, Jason. There was conversation about that. However, this issue was brought up with Mr. Barrett as well. It was supposed to be wrapped into an existing project, and the sidewalk was either a sidewalk and or a paved shoulder from, the priority was on Cockshut from Concession to up to Swan specifically. So like we're now a year and a half since that deputation, I was told that the money was put away for it, and I since informed residents. So I will circle back to them and let them know that a report is coming. However, the priority from that deputation was Cockshut Road only. If those two can be separated, if that makes sense at all, just thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, just on that note, I am currently unaware of where any monies were set aside or otherwise approved by council for that. However, I can have that verified, and we'll go back to that one. Line painting, as you are all aware, was an issue that did not happen last year. We did have some deputations here, one in particular being near St. Cecilia's in Port Dover. With regards to the painting of a crosswalk there. I guess this is a generalized update for across the county that, as you are aware, you did pass the bylaw for the contract to be signed with our line painting crew tonight. Therefore, we are moving forward on that. We've already had preliminary conversations with the contractor, and that work is expected to begin in mid-June. Councillor Martin had previously referenced the potential for a crosswalk on Highway 6 in and around the Don John or Somerset area, and our need to be dealing with the MTO on that. We have had some preliminary discussions. However, until we had an absolute location, there's nothing further we could do at this point. We are continuing to move forward with keeping the MTO involved, and with now looking forward to what we would need for any kind of budget. There is no budget for this item. So right now the best we can do is have a council-directed budget amendment, or we bring this forward as a potential 2021 project, in which case then we would wrap all of the details and finalization into that. And I believe the final point I had was relating to Phragmites control. Again, Norfolk staff in roads and our drainage division, I believe Mr. Cridlin and some of his CSD staff may have also, CES staff may have also been involved. But we do have a number of groups that have been interested in work relating to frag across the county. Some of that being the Nature Conservancy of Canada, the University of Guelph. We are having some conversations about where we can potentially partner with them for some of the Phragmites removals. Some of this would be in stormwater management ponds across the county, where we own the land and we don't necessarily have a good solid plan of how to get that frag out of some of those systems, as well as some of our roadside ditches, municipal drains. There is one of the areas of concern that we do have is surrounding some of the MTO roads, and ultimately what it's come down to is if it's MTO property, Norfolk County does not necessarily have the authority to do removals or other excavations or work on their property. It is a conversation that is ongoing with the MTO as to what we can do in some of these instances. I guess operationally, we would equate it to that just as we wouldn't want the province coming in and changing things within Norfolk County's owned properties or roads, they would not want the same from us without coming to some sort of agreement on that. So it sounds like additional red tape, and I apologize for that. However, I would also encourage any local residents who have issues with these types of matters where it is an MTO road where Norfolk County does not have the ability to respond as quickly or effectively, that they reach out to the MTO for these types of matters as well. I do have a whole list of other projects here. However, I feel like I will save some of these for next meeting, and I can also follow up via email or an info memo to council for next month.
Good call.
And that's all.
All right. Anything further from anyone else? Thanks, Jason. Motion moved by Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Columbus, that bylaw 2020-46 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Norfolk County at this council meeting held on the 19th day of May 2020 be approved, signed by the mayor and clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. All those in favor? It's carried. And finally, that council be adjourned at 9:32, moved by